From being able to see the Great Wall from space, to Europe and Asia are separate continents, geography is full of lies, measurement mix-ups, and cartographic myths we all grew up believing. And today, I'm revealing the truth behind them. Starting off with number 50. The Everglades isn't a swamp. It's actually a very shallow, very slow river. It's called the River of Grass, and it flows from Lake Okeechobee to the Gulf of Mexico, sometimes rebranded as the Gulf of America. It only moves at around 2,000 feet per day, just over a third of a mile. The Mississippi, in comparison, rushes between 28 to 72 miles per day. But speed doesn't matter. The water moves in a specific direction and is contained by banks. So, it's a river. And once you realize rivers aren't what we think they are, it turns out we don't even agree on how they end. Number 49. Deltas and estuaries both describe rivers, but they're not interchangeable. And not every river has a delta. All deltas are estuaries, but not all estuaries are deltas. Still with me? If tides are too strong, or the river's moving too fast, that sediment never settles. No delta, still an estuary. And sometimes rivers don't end at all, they just give up. Number 48. Some rivers just rage quit, like the Okavango River in Botswana, which flows inland and then just disappears. 40,000 years ago, tectonic activity trapped the river in a trough in the desert, creating the Okavango Delta. Water pours into the area, where it either sinks into the sand or evaporates thanks to the 90 to 97 degree Fahrenheit heat. Think that's unusual? Some rivers can't even decide which direction they're supposed to go in. Number 47. In 2022, South Australia's Murray River flowed backwards, and it wasn't even the first time. In this case, a stronger water source simply bullied it into submission. When the nearby Goulburn River floods, it creates a pressure wall so strong it forces Murray's water back toward its source. Even the Mississippi has reversed course. In 2012, Hurricane Isaac dumped so much rain that the river rose 10 feet. Then the storm surge from the Gulf of America piled on top of it, literally pushing ocean water upriver for a day. If rivers can hit rivers, it shouldn't surprise anyone that some of them don't even stay on land. Number 46. Rivers aren't just found on land. There's one flowing under the Black Sea. If it was on the surface, it would be the 6th largest river in the world, just behind the Congo and the Ganges. It's formed by salty water pouring through the Bosporus Strait. Because it's denser than the surrounding water, it doesn't mix. It sinks, spreads out, and starts behaving like a river with its own current. It even has its own banks, waterfalls, and rapids. And just when you think rivers couldn't get any stranger, number 45. Think of a flowing river and that cool water washing over you. Okay, now imagine that water getting hotter and hotter. Seems unlikely, huh? Well, not in Chennai Timpishka, the boiling river of the Amazon. Located deep in the Peruvian jungle, it's heated by geothermal sources way underground. Its average annual temperature ranges from 75 degrees Fahrenheit to 84 degrees Fahrenheit. But it gets even weirder. Some geothermal scientists have logged temperatures of over 194 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, it's not just rivers breaking the rules, entire landscapes do it too. Number 44. The Sahara is dry, warm, and it definitely doesn't snow, right? Well, snowfall was recorded in the world's most famous desert on 6 different occasions, the latest in 2022. And it's not just some flurries either. In January of 2018, 15 inches of snow fell on the dunes around Ain Sefra, Algeria. And snow isn't the only thing the Sahara does that completely messes with our mental map. Number 43. The Sahara is one of the most barren places on Earth. But it's the reason the Amazon rainforest exists. Every year, winds lift millions of tons of dust out of the Sahara and blow it across the Atlantic. The dust is packed with phosphorus, vitamins for plants. Rainforests burn through phosphorus, and the constant rains wash it out the soil. Without it, the Amazon would starve. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. My internal compass has been spinning since the intro. Ready to continue? Good. Number 42. Lightning definitely strikes the same spot twice. That's literally the point of skyscraper antennae, to attract lightning. But even without man-made structures, lightning strikes the same place all the time. Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela gets struck by lightning 260 days a year. The lake is trapped in a mountain basin. Warm, humid air rises, cold air drops, and they slam into each other. The result is a built-in storm machine that fires almost every night. And while the sky is throwing the same tantrum every night, the Earth underneath is slowly rearranging the ocean. Number 41. Sea levels may be rising, but not in the Pacific. It's actually shrinking by around 1 inch per year. The reason? The Pacific tectonic plate is sliding under the plates around it. Eventually, that means Asia and the Americas will converge into one. It also means the Atlantic Ocean is expanding. One day, there will be an Eurasia continent and a massive Atlantic Ocean. And all that slow, invisible movement has a habit of showing up all at once. Number 40. The majority of earthquakes happen on fault lines. Except the word majority is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Over 90% of earthquakes happen at or near plate boundaries. Over millions of years, moving tectonic plates leave behind scars, weak spots in the Earth's crust. So, when stress from today's plate boundaries travels inward and hits one of those weak zones, the ground can suddenly snap. Imagine living thousands of miles from a fault line and still getting hit by a magnitude 7 quake. In 2017, that's how Botswana got hit by a 6.5 magnitude earthquake. And back in 1811 and 1812, the Mississippi River region was rocked by a series of quakes over magnitude 7, far from any plate edge. But not all geological surprises announce themselves with earthquakes. Fact number 39. Where are the most glaciers? Must be an Arctic region, surely. The answer? Pakistan. Northern Pakistan, specifically the region of Gilgit-Baltistan, is home to over 7,000 glaciers. 3 ranges dominate the area, including the Himalayas, the Karakoram, and the Hindu Kush. Recent studies say that the number of glaciers in Pakistan may be even higher, with the country hosting over 13,000, many of which are still unnamed. Glaciers aren't the only things geography puts in unexpected places, though. Number 38. The Dead Sea is not a sea. Okay, it was a sea 6 million years ago. Today, it's actually a very salty lake, one that's 10 times saltier than the actual ocean, with 34% salinity. It can't lose water through any means except evaporation and has no remaining connection to the ocean, so it's officially a lake. And if you think bodies of water should at least match their names, geography has other plans. Fact number 37. Seas have to have coastlines, and they do. Except for one, the Sargasso Sea. Located in the northern Atlantic Ocean, the Sargasso Sea isn't surrounded by land. It's surrounded by currents that flow circularly, known as an ocean gyre. That means the appearance, and even the life found within it, can be different than that of the water right outside of it. It's also usually calmer than the stormy Atlantic, as its circular current keeps it isolated from the tall waves and turbulent waters surrounding it. But even when water stays put, it doesn't always behave the way we expect. Number 36. Lakes are freshwater or salty, but Lake Balkhash in Kazakhstan would like a word. The western part contains mostly fresh water. It's wide and shallow, fed by melting snow from the nearby mountains. The eastern part is mostly saltwater. The rivers that feed it are full of salt water. But how come this water stays divided? Because the two sides are connected by a narrow strait that makes it hard for both salt and fresh water to mix that much. And sometimes the confusion isn't in the water at all. It's on the map. Fact number 35. There's 5 Great Lakes, except Lake Huron and Lake Michigan are actually the same thing. Seriously. They're only considered separate because of naming conventions. They're connected through the Straits of Mackinac, but the way water flows there keeps both lakes at the same level. Early explorers didn't understand the Michigan wilderness. The lakes were so enormous that Lake Huron and Lake Michigan seemed completely separate. And now, no one wants to rewrite every elementary school textbook to fix it. And if you think mislabeling a couple of lakes is wild, wait until you hear about the lakes we didn't even realize existed at all. Fact number 34. Antarctica is just a frozen landmass with over 400 lakes. One problem though, they're all buried beneath the continent's ice sheet. A handful are above ground, a couple are even ice-free, but the subglacial lakes are formed by meltwater from the ice above, trapped and then insulated from freezing conditions by the ice sheet. One of the bigger ones is almost 1.5 million years old. Scientists think other lakes could be up to 15 million years old. And Antarctica isn't the only thing hiding in plain sight. Fact number 33. Quick pop quiz. Name all the continents. Nice try, but you missed one. Zealandia. 94% of the continent is submerged. The only parts of the landmass that are visible above the water are New Zealand and New Caledonia. It's the thinnest and youngest continent, above half the size of Australia. It's so thin and dense, it's sunk lower than other continents. Once you realize we missed an entire continent, it makes you wonder what else we've misplaced. Fact number 32. Mount Everest isn't in Nepal. It's shared between Nepal and China. In fact, its peak sits right on the border between the two countries. But most people associate the world's tallest mountain with Nepal because that's where the shorter, easier hiking path to go up the mountain starts. And given how insanely difficult it is to cross the border on Everest, China has never really bothered putting checkpoints on the peak. It'd be a cool passport stamp to get though. Other mountains aren't immune to this confusion either. Fact number 31. K2 is not in the Himalayas, a mistake a lot of people make, but it's actually in the Karakoram range, which on average has a denser concentration of taller peaks than the Himalayas. From a distance, the Karakoram and Himalayas look like they're part of the same mountain range. Sometimes borders want to get in on the act too. Number 30. Take a quick look at Afghanistan on a map. Got a lot of neighbors, huh? Including China. It doesn't look like it at first glance, but thanks to the narrow Wakhan corridor, it's true. The corridor stretches between Tajikistan and Pakistan to reach China. It ranges between 16 to 60 kilometers, 10 to 37 miles in width. At its narrowest, that's just 2.5 times the Las Vegas Strip. Why is it there? The British, as usual. They were trying to prevent another war with Russia. So this small part of land was ceded to the Kingdom of Afghanistan, eliminating a direct border between the two empires. We've seen rivers that crawl like grass, vanish into deserts, reverse direction, and even flow underwater. Plus, a desert that snows and secretly keeps the Amazon alive. Geography isn't broken. It's just way less honest than we were taught. And we're not even halfway through. There's a whole lot of weird facts to come. Number 29. The border between Italy and Switzerland isn't fully fixed. Part of the border is determined by glacial ridgelines beneath the Matterhorn, but the glaciers are melting. Switzerland lost 4% of its glacial volume in 2023 and 6% in 2022. So in 2024, the two countries agreed to redraw the border. And since the melt isn't slowing down, it probably won't be the only redrawing that has to take place. So next time you book your Swiss ski holiday, be prepared to possibly wake up in Italy instead. Of course, not every border problem is about where the line is drawn. Number 28. Not every country has its own border control. Just ask Liechtenstein, which has offloaded its visa policy entirely to Switzerland. All imports and exports are handled according to Swiss rules, and as of 2011, there's no border control between the two countries as they both joined the Schengen zone. While that sounds like two friendly countries helping each other out, it does cause some problems. No border checks meant criminals could move assets a lot easier, and let's face it, Liechtenstein's banks are pretty attractive if you're hiding a whole lot of cash, and when borders get fuzzy, clocks tend to follow. Fact number 27. You can be in two time zones at once, assuming you're in Nicosia, the only divided capital in the world. After the invasion of Cyprus in 1974, Turkey continues to occupy the northeastern side of the island. A UN-controlled buffer zone allows Greek and Turkish Cypriots to pass back and forth between the two territories, and this causes a problem. Because Turkey doesn't observe daylight savings time, and the official Republic of Cyprus does. So Nicosia has the same time during the summer, but in the winter, you better make sure you know which side you have an appointment on, because you could show up a full hour late. Borders causing problems isn't new. Sometimes they were wrong from the start. Number 26. School kids in the US learned that the country doesn't extend above the 49th parallel, the latitude line agreed on as the US-Canada border about 2 centuries ago. But that's not true. It's all because of a map-making mistake known as the Northwest Angle. In northern Minnesota, the Northwest Angle is cut off from the rest of the US by the Lake of the Woods. To reach it, you have to pass through Canada. Why? Surveyors in the 1780s dropped the ball and misjudged the geography of the region's lakes and wilderness. Borders don't just cause scheduling problems, they nearly cause wars. Fact number 25. 3 tiny, mostly uninhabited islands in the Beagle Channel nearly sparked a war. An 1881 treaty between Argentina and Chile left their southern border vague, and both later wanted Atlantic access. In 1977, international arbitration ruled the islands belonged to Chile. Argentina rejected the ruling and deployed troops. Things got so tense that the Pope got involved. The dispute was finally settled in 1984, with the islands going to Chile and maritime rights to Argentina, averting war. Then there's the countries that fight over borders that don't even stick around. Number 24, if you feel bad about making geography mistakes, don't worry. India and Bangladesh mistakenly fought over a few tiny islands for decades until they completely disappeared. Newmore and South Tapati Island were formed by the Bola cyclone in 1970, and both countries wanted control of them. But they turned out to be silt deposits that eroded into nothing in the 2010s. That didn't stop the Permanent Court of Arbitration awarding ownership of the islands to India in 2014, but it was already too late. But not every strange border shifts or fades away. Some are frozen in place. Fact number 23. The DMZ that divides North and South Korea isn't no man's land. There are actually 2 villages in the 2.5-mile buffer zone, one in each country. The North Korean town is called Kijongdong. The South Korean town is called Daeseongdong. Freedom Village. Life in Freedom Village is hard. The population is just under 200 people. Villagers are shadowed by South Korean soldiers. They also have a strict midnight to sunrise curfew and must answer a roll call every night. Getting visits is exceptionally hard, with visitors needing approval at least 2 weeks in advance. So why live there? Well, South Korea has given the villagers perks, like exemptions from mandatory military service and tax cuts. In some parts of the world, borders aren't lines at all. Fact number 22. Western Sahara's borders don't really exist. Its northern boundary with Morocco is disputed, and inside the territory, the real division isn't a line at all. It's a 1,700-mile sand wall. Called the Berm, it's laced with trenches, barbed wire, and landmines, which, in practice, works far better as a border than any line on a map. Of course, some borders only exist because countries decided to stop being separate in the first place. Fact number 21. Australia wasn't a British colony. It was 6. Up until January 1st, 1901, Australia was made up of self-governing British colonies. These were New South Wales, Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, Western Australia, and Tasmania. They each had their own parliaments, laws, railway system, and taxes. Regional leaders eventually realized that internal trade barriers and fragmented defense would weaken the newly independent colonies, so they chose to team up instead. Even when borders disappear, history still decides who speaks what on either side. Fact number 20. Brazil isn't the only South American country that doesn't speak Spanish. The official language of Guyana is English, and Suriname is Dutch. Suriname was a Dutch colony since 1667, only gaining independence in 1975. Though the Dutch had also settled their first English-speaking Guyana became a British colony from 1831 to 1966. It remains the only English-speaking country in South America. South America's geography plays just as many tricks as language does, though. Fact number 19. Europe's largest national park isn't located on the continent. The Guiana Amazonian Park is located in the French Guiana and covers over almost 13,000 square miles, 41% of the region. It's so remote that it can't be reached from the coast. Access is only possible by small aircraft or by boat along the Moroni or Oyapock rivers. From one of the most isolated parks on Earth to one of the most misidentified landmarks on it. Fact number 18. Most people confuse London's Tower Bridge for the famous London Bridge. Built between 1886 and 1894, Tower Bridge is much more stately and impressive looking than the relatively simple-looking London Bridge. A flat, concrete, and steel bridge over several arches. But even this London Bridge isn't the original London Bridge. The original one, built in 1831, has been dismantled and carefully reconstructed stone by stone in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. It couldn't support London's heavy modern traffic anymore, so the City of London sold it in the 1960s, and its reconstruction in Arizona was completed in 1971. And speaking of things people think they understand, engineering is full of misconceptions too. Fact number 17. Canals don't always need locks to get ships across. The Suez Canal doesn't have locks. Why? Because the seas it connects, the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, are at the same level. That happens because the land in the area of the canal is mostly flat, as opposed to the Panama Canal, where the waterway crosses a continental divide. The difference between the Panama Canal's two endpoints, the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, is about half the height of a bowling pin. But the real elevation change via locks is around 85 feet thanks to the land along the isthmus. So sometimes geography keeps things level on purpose. Other times, it lies straight to your face. Fact number 16. Miami's not that hot. The city has actually never registered a temperature above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Sea breezes from the surrounding Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea moderate the city's temperatures, but the humidity makes things toasty. It averages 60 to 70% during the winter months and a staggering 80 to 90% during the summer months. It's in the only tropical area of the contiguous US, and 90 degrees Fahrenheit with 80% humidity feels like 113 degrees Fahrenheit. So no matter what the thermometer says, you're gonna sweat your body weight the minute you step outside. But you're about to see, climate doesn't just shape weather. It rewrites migration, borders, and history. Number 15. The Sahara wasn't always a desert. Scientists believe it goes through 21,000-year cycles where it gets green and then desertifies, again and again and again. This relates to the wobbling of the Earth's orbit, which affects the African monsoon. When the monsoon strengthens, the increased rainfall transforms the Sahara into green grasslands. When it wanes, it reverts back to a desert. Researchers now believe that the original Stone Age migration of humans across the Sahara into present-day Europe occurred because the Green Sahara allowed them to cross. And nowhere is that more obvious than in places we think of as extreme. Number 14. India isn't just a hot, humid country full of big cities and rainforests. In fact, it has 6 different climate regions. This includes alpine conditions in the Himalayan states like Himachal Pradesh and Kashmir, and arid conditions in the Thar Desert region. Weirdly enough, it's also one of the most densely populated deserts on Earth. It has between 207 and 215 people per square mile, compared to most other desert regions' average of 18 people per square mile. Let's move from climate confusion to political borders. Fact number 13. Even though the UN headquarters lie within the city limits of New York City, they aren't technically in the US. The headquarters are international territory with their own security force, owned by the United Nations. The 18 acres the UN sits on cannot be entered by US law enforcement without consent from the UN itself. That applies to federal, state, and local officials and law enforcement. The idea is to protect the special international status of the political body and the building it's headquartered in. If a crime does happen, UN security responds first and then usually coordinates with the NYPD. However, some UN officials have diplomatic immunity. That means there's a building in Manhattan where the law stops at the front door, and accountability depends entirely on who's sitting inside. And sometimes, autonomy exists on paper and nowhere else. Fact number 12. While people believe it is a separate entity, Hong Kong is no longer truly autonomous. While it historically functioned as a semi-autonomous special administrative region, the Chinese government has placed it more firmly under its control since 2020. Legal changes in 2021 allowed China to block political participation of groups Beijing did not approve of. So when elections for Hong Kong's next chief executive happened on May 8, 2022, China's preferred candidate, John Lee, ended up with more than 99% of the vote. And he was the only one allowed to run. Colonial maps don't always tell the truth, even when the empire technically never left. Fact number 11. While most people may think otherwise, Martinique, Réunion, and French Guiana aren't French colonies. They're just France. They're subject to the same laws with the same voice, representation, financial systems, and currency. Well, theoretically, at least. Locals complain that their voices aren't taken as seriously by the French government. In September of 2024, thousands of people in Martinique took to the streets to protest rising prices. France deployed riot police to handle the uprising. Up to this point, we've seen deserts packed with people, global institutions sitting outside national law, cities that aren't as hot as their reputations, and entire regions that are legally part of countries most people think they're separate from. We've hit the top 10, and the world is far stranger than it looks on a map. Fact number 10. It's a now disproven myth that you can see the Great Wall of China from space. But did you know that there are some geographical features that are so big you can only see them from space? The reach-out structure in the Sahara Desert cannot be seen from the ground. Known as the Eye of the Sahara, it's made up of a bunch of concentric blue-tinted circles measuring around 28 miles across, as big as 5 Mount Everests laid down base to tip. If you were on the ground in Mauritania, all you'd see is a bunch of small dark rocks scattered across the desert. Once you zoom out far enough to see things like that, Earth itself starts to look very different. Fact number 9. The Earth is actually really smooth. Although we see a landscape full of deep oceans and soaring mountains, compared to the entire size of the planet, these differences are nothing. In fact, Earth is smoother than a billiard ball, but some surprises are much closer to home. Number 8. Europe isn't just temperate and tundra-ish. It has a desert. The Tabernas Desert is the only one on the continent, and it's located in Almeria, Spain. It's partly what allowed spaghetti westerns to be filmed in Europe. Tabernas could stand in for the huge arid deserts of the American West. Over 300 movies were shot here, and some film sets are still left standing for tourists to visit. Game of Thrones shot an episode in the Tabernas, as did Black Mirror. Europe's geography isn't just strange because of climate. Borders complicate it even more. Number 7. Spain isn't just close to Morocco. Some of it is surrounded by Morocco, thanks to the exclaves of Ceuta and Melilla. These little-known Spanish protectorates are on the northern coast of Morocco, and they've been Spanish in some form or another since the 15th century. They also have the European Union's only land borders with Africa. They were important port cities for trade between Africa and Europe, but today, local unemployment is still more than 30%. Still, people cross the border from Morocco into them to earn a living, creating tensions at the border. Some borders matter a lot less, depending on where you're standing. Fact number 6. There actually is a place on Earth where citizens of almost any country can live and work visa-free, if you're willing to brave the cold and polar bears of Svalbard, that is. And it's not just the frozen environments and wildlife that wants to eat you that poses a problem. There are a few other hiccups. First, you can only enter Svalbard through Norway. You also need a job, or the ability to support yourself. And considering Svalbard has a population of between 2,600 and 3,000, and is located way up in the Arctic tundra, jobs aren't that easy to come by. Or housing. But if you can get a job and house lined up, all you have to deal with is months of darkness and below freezing temperatures for most of the year. There are still places on Earth, though, where borders barely exist at all. Fact number 5. 7 countries claim different parts of Antarctica, but not all the territory is claimed. There's a massive no man's land known as Marie Byrd Island. It stretches over 620,000 square miles, 4 times the size of California. It's the largest unclaimed territory on Earth. Part of the reason is its extreme isolation. Even by Antarctic standards, it's remote, the farthest point from any other continent, and so inhospitable that when Admiral Richard E. Byrd flew over it in 1929 and named it after his wife, his crew couldn't even land to set up camp. Even in the most remote places on the planet, the ground itself isn't done doing weird things. Fact number 4. Volcanoes don't just spew lava. The mud volcanoes of Azerbaijan spit out, you guessed it, mud. 350 of the world's 700 mud volcanoes are in Azerbaijan's Gobustan National Park. They average about 33 feet in diameter. much smaller than a regular volcano, but they can occasionally reach heights of 2,300 feet, twice the height of the Eiffel Tower. Strangest of all, the mud bubbling out of a mud volcano is usually cold to the touch. I said usually. Don't go around sticking your fingers in all of them to double check it. And now, it's time for the top 3. Early maps of the South China Sea misidentified some reefs as islands. No biggie, right? Except this geographic mistake might lead to actual war. China, Vietnam, and other countries have been claiming them as their respective land, sometimes even building fake islands over them to strengthen their claims in the South China Sea. Most of this building is centered on the Spratly and Paracel Islands, where since 2013, China has created at least 3,200 acres of new land. If fake islands can push countries toward conflict, wait until you see what happens when someone redraws a border for millions of people. Fact number 2. You'd think a lot of care goes into drawing political borders, but a lot of times it's literally a random guy given a map. Case in point, the divide between India and Pakistan. Known as the Radcliffe Line, it divided up communities, infrastructure, and even waterways. This caused issues with road systems, communication, and irrigation. Between 500,000 and 1 million people died in both countries, and 10 to 12 million people had to cross the border in Punjab and Bengal to escape the chaos. Why was the line drawn so badly and unnaturally? Because it was drawn by a lawyer, Cyril Radcliffe, that had never once stepped foot in the area before being given the somewhat important task of splitting up 2 countries. But the British were always a little casual about borders. Fact number 1. On March 1st, 2025, the unthinkable happened. Symbolically, the sun finally set on the British Empire. The freeze came about in the first place because the UK had control of so many territories and colonies around the world. That meant there was always a place where the sun was shining on the UK, no matter the time of day. But the UK has let go of most of its colonies. The sun continued to shine on the Pitcairn Islands and parts of the British Atlantic Territory for the next few months, until the spring equinox on March 20th. The South Pole was plunged in darkness, and at 10:50 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:50 a.m. in London, the sun literally set on the British Empire. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.